If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for another live stream episode of the show. I really appreciate it. We've all had times where we were alone at night, no one else in the house, and something frightening happened. Well, depending on what happened to you, I'm sure what happened ranges from pretty mild to pretty wild, but I want you to imagine for a second what it would be like to be a stay-at-home mom. You have your 1-year-old with you. It's late at night. Your husband's working because he works the third shift. Well, we've all heard those bumps in the night. Well, in almost every case, it turned out to be nothing. But just imagine for a second being in that position. The nearest neighbor is really far away. All of a sudden, you hear the doorknob jiggle. Well, yeah, thumps and bumps can happen in the house at night because the house is settling or whatever other reason, but doorknobs don't just jiggle. If they jiggle, obviously something turned it. Well, imagine how much worse it would be when at first you're afraid, you're terrified, it's a burglar that's about to break in. Well, imagine for a second how you would feel if that would have been the better option to what actually happened. Imagine for a second what it would be like for you to come to the terrifying realization that no, it's not a burglar out there that jiggled the doorknob. It's a Dogman, and you're looking right at it through the window as it's looking in. Well, I can't do what happened to tonight's eyewitness any justice or the other encounters that she's had, so let's bring her in here now. Tiffany, thanks so much for joining us.
Hello, good evening.
Thanks so much for joining us. You know, we really appreciate it. Tiffany, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I am just a country girl from Tioga County, born and raised here. I've been here my whole entire life. I've rarely gone out to see much of the world. I've been busy, having family, raising my kids. Much beyond that, I mean, I don't think I've worked for a few places in my life. I've worked for an orthodontist office, something boring, exciting at the same time. It's always something new with the kids. And I've also worked for a military company, which has been interesting. And it's also been good for my family because my husband was in the Marine Corps. And so we get, it's nice when you know each other's work and you're able to talk about that with the other person. So that's been really nice. Just these encounters that I've had throughout my life, they haven't been traumatizing. The first one was extremely traumatizing. After that, these encounters, they've been a part of our life. We've either had to live with them or move. So, I told Vic before, we haven't mentioned it to our kids. My oldest son, I think he kind of knows a little bit because he visits now and then. He's 22 years old. He comes and goes. Maybe we see him 6 times a year when he comes back home. But he's not here long enough. And we've never actually talked to him about that. There's very few people that know about this situation. And I mean, we've kept this in for quite a long time. As of last week, I just told my mother. And that's a conversation that I'll have a little bit later that ties into one of my encounters. But besides that, just small town girl raising her family. And that's about it.
It sure sounds to me like you've carved out a good life for yourselves, you and your family, but it really is a shame those dogmen are around. Of course, you said the first one was the only encounter that was so terrifying and over the top, but they're still around and you still have concerns about them being around. So that definitely does act as a buzzkill, to say the least. I'm wondering though, Tiffany, you describe yourself as having a love hate relationship with them. What do you love about Dogmen?
Oh my gosh. So I think for the people who have not been terrorized by them, um, it kind of like when I listened to your, episode last night, it's a majestic thing. I'm telling you, when you see something that looks half human, half dog, you're not sure what you're looking at, and you just want to stare at it for hours because you're not certain at what you're seeing. I feel like I'm kind of a little bit blessed to be able to witness that quite a bit. Um, I and of course, I grew up like, fairy tale this, all the crazy, like what, Harry Potter, all that kind of stuff. And to be able to actually like witness and be around these things, I do find that like very, very interesting. The hate part is that I'm still scared to take my kids out into our woods. We don't side by side here. My husband loves it. We don't do it for a reason, and I'll get into that later. But yeah, there's love and hate.
Wow, that really is a shame. Here you've got this nice property and everything, and you're hamstrung. Like you said,
Yeah,
your husband can't go out there and hop in the side by side and tear things up out there because of the fear of the dogmen being around. And
yeah, we tried
you're,
that. We've tried it. It doesn't go over very well. And I think, I've always wanted to go down to my neighbors. They're all half a mile from us, and I want to knock on their door so bad. I wanted to do it before this, so if somebody had something to add to this, I couldn't bring myself to it because I don't want to bring attention you know to these creatures. I'm scared what would happen to them.
wow, that's admirable. Here you are, you're intimidated by them, but at the same time, you're concerned about their well being. So, yeah, that's
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want them in a lab somewhere. I don't want them. Who knows? Like, who knows what would happen to them? They're a being just like any other being. Just let them. As long as like things are peaceful, and they have been for the past, 10 years. I'm gonna leave it at that.
well, I don't need to tell you how unusual it would be for an eyewitness such as yourself to have that concern about their well being after having been
Right?
so frightened by a dog man, especially when you had that first encounter. So
Yeah.
that's
Yep.
really impressive. Touching on something you just said, you're concerned that talking about the dog men that you've had encounters with around your property will make them more likely to come around. Without telling us any details about your encounters, Tiffany, how many dogmen have you seen around your property, and how many encounters would you say that you've had?
I want to say it would have to be because I was talking to my husband about this. Including the first one, it'd have to be five total. Um, and I think it's not a coincidence. He doesn't think it's a coincidence. Um, I'm not saying when we're inside our home, late at night, sitting in our bed, talking about them, that they hear us. We have a beautiful wraparound porch, and we love to drink coffee in the morning. We love to drink coffee at night. Like that is what we're doing, sitting outside when the kids go to bed. We have a lot of free time like that, especially me. And I've seen a lot, and I'm telling you, it's after I get done with this, I just it's not a coincidence. It's not like when we talk about them, things happen. I think they hear us. It just can't be a coincidence because I think the universe, like you're supposed to look for signs, like a lot of my prayers have been answered throughout the years, and I believe that you're supposed to look for signs. And when it happens more than once, more than twice, more than three times, then it's not a coincidence anymore.
Wow, what a shame. And by the way, Mike from Long Island, Bigfoot, thanks so much for the support for the donation. But yeah, what a shame. Here you want to sit on your porch and have coffee and just enjoy the view on the property, but you can't because of these guys being around. At any moment, you might have another one pop up. That's just horrible. I don't know what to do to stop all this from happening other than telling you that I want you to get the best picture of one for me. If they do
Oh,
make
that's
themselves
yeah,
known, yeah, if you
yep.
can get a great picture to send me, if they know what your thoughts are, if they know that's going through your head, they're gonna be pretty sparse around there. So,
That's why I was like, I told my husband, I said, I do not want to do the show at our house tonight. I said, we're going to your mother-in-law's. I said, I can't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just so he's like, I really would love to stay home this weekend. I said, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I said, we need to go there. I said, I just would feel way more comfortable if I wasn't at home talking about this.
whatever you have to do to be comfortable doing this, you should do. So I'm glad that you did
Yeah.
decide to leave home and do this. Whether it's going to make a difference on them coming back around, I don't know. But if they do have the ability to read your thoughts, like I said, if they know that Tiffany is actively trying to get a good photo of them, I'd be awfully surprised if you did have any good opportunities to snap a photo. So,
I know. I always do want to ask my neighbors too, because we don't have trail cams up. I want to ask them, at one point, like, I mean, they've lived here just as long as I have. Like, have you seen, I'm sure, at least my one neighbor, I'm sure has trail cams up. I just wonder if he's ever gotten anything on them, because he's an older gentleman. So I just, I don't want to be that crazy person knocking on their door asking questions.
well, I can appreciate that concern, but between the two of you, only one of you knows true reality. If you are knocking on their door, it's for a valid reason. Whether they see the validity in that or not, that's on them. But you know the truth, they don't. So if they do think you're crazy, that's a them problem, not a Tiffany
Right.
problem.
Right. And I'm like, and I don't want to, if nothing's happened to them, like, or their property, I don't want to bring attention to it. But it would be really neat if I could get some kind of like night camera or something that could take pictures in our right at the like the tree line at our property. That would be really neat because that's when you can see them most of the time. That's when you can spot them.
Well, keep your head on the swivel. If that opportunity does present itself to get that $1 million photo, you know who wants to see it. So hopefully
Yes,
that knowledge will keep them away.
that's right.
Yeah, I hope it does. All right, Tiffany, please tell us about those encounters now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay, so we're going back to 2002. So I got married young, um, at 18. Uh, we had our first child in 2000 and it would have been 2001. And, you know, very young couple. We were doing what we could at the time, what we thought was right, getting married, getting a little apartment. We both were working, you know, and then he's like, I think it'd be great. We could afford daycare, stay at home with our chick with our kid. And I said, sure, I think that would be great for now because things are overwhelming. So I'm staying at home. We have the tiny apartment. Well, my uncle, he worked for IBM at the time and he was building this beautiful, like he had these blueprints for this beautiful 3-story log cabin. Like it would be like a finished basement. You're talking like the I guess the second floor and then the third floor. And the third floor would have a wraparound balcony. And, it's out in the sticks of Tioga County. And if you go on any Google map and look that up a little bit, you can see what I'm talking about. So we're up probably 15 miles from a rural town anyways. So our driveway is about a quarter of a mile long. And as you're my Uncle Tim's driveway, as you're going up it, it's beautiful. Like the property is just beautiful. As you're going up that driveway, you look down and you can see the pond. It's a big pond and it's got like a fast flowing, I guess you call it like a stream or a creek that kind of goes like, I don't know, 10 or 20 feet next to it. and then tree line behind where the house is, and there's a garage that he had made, and he made this garage into like a home, and he it was like a cottage, and then he called it the garage. So that's where he lived while he was building the house. Well, the house is half built, and he called me up one day and he said, "Hey Tiff," he goes, do you want to come stay?" He goes, "I know you guys are having a hard time right now. All you would have to do is pay utilities and make me some food sometime." And I said, "That sounds amazing." So of course, we took him up on the offer. I think we moved in June of 2002. So husband worked night shift. Everything was going great. I, like I would take my son down to the pond. There was like a little rowboat type thing. I never felt comfortable with putting him like in his car seat in that or whatever. Again, young mom. Um, but he did. My little Tim did have this little kitten, and like when the baby was sleeping, I'd run down to the pond and I'd row around in the fishing, do some fishing, rowing around in the pond with the little kitten, and like in the rowboat, never had a problem. And so this would have been October, a couple days before Halloween, maybe a day or the day before. And it's around 11 o'clock at night. And I only know this because of like the minutes it took me before I had to call somebody. Um, I hear this crash. Like, I mean, it sounded like a car had rolled over into the house. And alls I'm thinking as that happened is the garage is built like like a slope. So like half of the side of it is like on a hill, like a mini hill, tiny. And I thought it like a deer had slipped down, had like fallen on like the wet leaves because it's autumn, and hit the side of the house. And I'm like, oh my God. So I go and I want to check on the baby. Well, I go, we don't, again, just to let you guys know, we don't have any blinds in this house. We didn't feel that there was any need to have them because we're so far out. We had some curtains on some windows. And my son had curtains on his windows. They're always open though. So as I'm walking in his room, I have eyes on him in the crib. And as I'm walking in the room, something, I don't know if it was like a movement from my right side or what, but as I turn to the right and I'm standing in the doorway, I see, I'm thinking I'm looking at my reflection in the window. And then before it even registered in my head, I felt it in my chest. Like I felt my heart pounding. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not my reflection. And I must have turned my head a little sideways because it's like as soon as this creature noticed that I noticed him, like, or it went crazy. Now, I'm not looking at a human. I'm looking at something with these like very bright eyes, huge nose. It's hairy, and that's all I see when I'm in the window. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I crawl on the floor to my son's crib. It's like crawl, like army crawl. Like I don't know what that's gonna do. And I hear this thing. It sounds like a 600-pound man trying to run a marathon is what it sounded like. That's the only way I can describe it. It sounded horrible, like very awful. And I grabbed my son and I run out. Like this place is tiny. This garage is just tiny. So I run out to the where the kitchen counter is. We're not finished building that all the way yet though. Though we had knocked it down, we made it like an L shape. So I'm hiding underneath it. And I hear this thing and I'm like, oh my gosh, the phone. The phone. At that time. Okay, so we're talking 2002. I had like one of those phones that you like put on the charger. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have any of that then. So I run back like to the bedroom, grab the phone, and I'm run back to my son, and he's sitting on the floor. He's trying to crawl all around, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no! Please sit still." Sweating profusely. Like I don't think I've sweat that much. Like even giving labor to my kids, I'm like sweat is pouring off my face, and I called 911, and I can hear this thing, and it's going around the house. It's going around the house, and all of a sudden my door handle starts going up, down, up, down, up, down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, did I lock the door? I don't know if I locked the door. And I'm talking to the 911 dispatcher, and she can hear. That's how loud this thing was. She could hear him. She could hear it. And I don't know why I keep saying him because I'm still not sure to this day if it was a male, but I guess when you're looking at these things and they don't look feminine, it's easy to call them a him. Just because males are bigger, they're more masculine, and that's exactly what this thing looked like. So she's like, at first she's like, okay, yep, we'll get somebody up there, like very like nonchalant. As soon as she hears like everything going on, her tone changed, and it made me more nervous. And she was like, they're gonna be there. They'll be right there. And she's trying to talk me through this. And I think it's a good idea to pop my head up over the countertop. So I have a picture window that's would be right to the left, not even 7, 8 feet away. This thing, this thing had to have been 9 feet or more tall, because that's how tall you would have to be for your head to be where his was. And I don't think he saw where I was, because if it did, it would have been looking right at me. I think, I guarantee it. And it was looking past, like way past me to like where my television was. The only light in the house that was on was the TV. And it's that I'm like, it's Halloween. It's almost Halloween. Somebody's playing a prank on me. It's got to be a prank. I keep saying this in my head, like, and I don't think my uncle would do something like this, but somebody's messing with me. And when I seen uh, this creature move its eyes, move its mouth, the way everything, his features were moving on its face, it absolutely wasn't a costume. It wasn't fake. It was real. And that's something I don't ever forget. I was scared at the time it happened. I'm glad I was very young when it happened, and that nobody really talked about it after the fact. So I guess it was kind of easy to move on from it. But as this thing, I couldn't really tell. I couldn't tell you if it was brown, black. It looked dark, looked like very dark fur, but I can tell you what the eyes look like for sure. And the eyes were like this yellow, this very bright yellow with like a red. I'm gonna say red or orangish ring right around the pupil, like right where the pupil was. And I just remember that because I remember his eyes moving back and forth, like looking at the TV, looking up, looking at the TV, looking up. It's not looking at me. And I'm thinking, okay, it doesn't know where I am. And then it kind of does, like every time it would breathe out, it would move its mouth up a little bit. Like the one side of its like where its snout was, it would move it up just a little bit. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, this is terrifying. So it's like as soon as that happened and I went back down, and I'm like, it's gonna get me, it's gonna come right through that picture window, and it's gonna get my baby. Because I was worried that like maybe my son was crying and I didn't hear it, and that's what brought it. I wasn't sure. So she's still talking to me. She goes, they should be there any minute. They should be there any minute. And it had to have taken him at least 12, 15 minutes to get to my house. Um, well, this thing I could hear it leaving. I can hear the thump. Like I can hear it stomp. It sounded like it was stomping, but I'm sure it was just walking away. And then you can hear it like it was like short steps and then long. But like when you can tell something's going faster. And then it wasn't even, I'd say, 45 seconds to 30 to 45 seconds after that, that I had 4 state troopers in my driveway, 2 sheriffs, and 1 game warden. And when I tell you that they went back there with the dog, they had 2 dogs. They went back there with the dog, and they said to my husband at the time, we followed it back about 2 miles and then we lost the scent. You know, case closed, end of story. That's what I thought, anyways. I left that very next morning, and I promised myself I would never go back there, ever, ever, ever. Moved in with my mom, which I said I would never do. Also, moved in with my mom, and you know, I guess according to my uncle, they had people up there for weeks. So if it was just, oh, it's nothing, like we lost the scent, whatever, I'm sure they wouldn't have people up there for weeks looking for whatever this may be. You know, Unfortunately, I never got to ask, my uncle about that, because before I even knew about Dogman or anything, he, had passed away. So, here I am living my life, getting on with that. Like, it didn't take me very long to get on with that, because like I said, I've had a lot of trauma in my life. So that, compared to everything that's happened throughout the years, didn't seem too bad at the time. And I've been looking for houses roughly at this time in my life for like a year now, and all of a sudden I see on our like realtor website that my uncle's house has come up for sale, and I am like, oh, a little too much than what I can do. You know what I did? I wanted that house so bad. Like, he was like, I didn't have a dad growing up, so my uncle to me was like my father. Like, he raised me. So I have a very short circle in my life. I have 2 friends. You know what I'm saying? I got 6 children, 2 friends, and he was everything to me at one point in my life. And as soon as I seen this house go up for sale, I said to myself, I am going to make it my goal. I will have this house. I need it. I need it. I want it. I want to be there. It's what I want, anyways. I want to be out in the country. I want to be out with something familiar in my life that sounded good at that point. So I'm working 3 jobs. I am able to get the house. I get it. I'm raising my kids there. Everything is fine. That incident comes up every once in a while on like a night that the kids go to bed early and I have nothing going on to do, or a scary show comes on or something. That always sticks with me a little bit. But for some reason, because I think I wanted this house so bad, I pushed it to the back of my head. Like, it didn't really happen. It's not what I thought I saw. Whatever, you know. Um, and it was like 8 months later, after I moved in, is when I saw the first one. So I'm just thinking that I'm seeing something in the tree line. It's before I have to go to work. And I keep seeing something go in and out behind a tree, in and out behind a tree. But I'm like, it's not a person. I can see ears, I can see hair, but it's tall. And it's not even clicking still. It's not even clicking to my encounter at all. And I'm like, what is that? And I'm like, should I get in the car? Should I go back in the house and maybe call somebody, And I'm looking, and then it drops down. It drops down to all fours, kind of just walks back. Like, this is in the tree line. So, okay, I kind of want to give you guys a picture of what this is like. So I have the house on top of the hill. As you're looking down from that wraparound porch, there's the pond and the stream after. If you look to your left, and it's about, say, 100 feet, 120 feet to the tree line is where I'm looking. So I'm up, I'm up, well, on like the second floor, I guess you could call it. And I keep going in and out of the door to try to see if I can see it. Has anybody ever done this? Where like you're looking through a window and you're like, I don't know, maybe I can see it better from outside. So you go and you're looking at something, from, or maybe you open up your window to see something better. Instead, I'm like that. I go outside, not even thinking. And this thing, like I said, drops off or walks back into the tree line. Don't think anything of it. Well, it's like a week later. I'm, I think it was my day off. It had to have been my day off because it was in the middle of the day. Yeah, I'd say it was like 2:30 yeah, it was 2:30 or 3. And I'm sitting there, and I'm eating a sandwich, drinking coffee, doing something. I don't even remember what I was doing, but I know I had my phone in my hand. And I'm watching this deer, this little, it must have been a young deer, like just out of like little babyhood, at the pond. They come there all the time, the sun, whatever. Every once in a while I'm glancing at it. And all of a sudden it starts doing something I've never seen an animal do on my property before. And it starts like making like huffing noises and stomping its feet. And I'm like, I wonder if, and even before I could even think, I wonder if something's like in the water, like making it mad or whatever. Um, this this creature was on top of him in no time, like before I could put my coffee down. Like I couldn't even set my coffee down fast enough for that to happen. And when I say that it killed this thing in probably 3 seconds, I don't know if it broke its neck. I don't know if it broke its back. I don't know what it did to it. It didn't even make a sound. It didn't even make a sound. It just was limp and was done. And I don't know, like if the dogman came from the tree line or if it came from behind the garage or where. I don't know because it happened that fast. And when I say that I've never seen an animal, regular animal, do this in my life. It's not looking at me. I only see the back of it. And it's like, it kind of looks like it's kneeling over the deer. The deer is limp. And this creature took a knee. It took a knee like a football player would take a knee. And that's when everything from before is going back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wasn't crazy. This is real. This is exactly what I thought it was. Is exactly what I think it is. Now, this thing doesn't look as scary and as ugly as as what I seen a long time ago. But then again, I'm young. I was young. I'm not saying that something can have gotten twisted in my head a little bit. And I'm seeing this one from further away, but it's black. It's very black, like a black shepherd. It looked like a big, big black shepherd with like a cross between a wolf, kind of like just a tiny, tiny little bit. And when it took the knee, it like looked like it was having like a hard time, like trying to get up on two legs. And then it got it up on two legs when it took that knee, and it took that deer and it stuffed it underneath its right arm, looked right up at me. Don't know if he knew it knew I was there the whole time. He had like, it looked right up at me, looked right back to the tree line, and nonchalantly just strided. Now when this thing walked, it walked with oh gosh, I want to call it like when an old person has a cane, like when their hips hurt. It walked exactly like that, and it walked right back to the tree line. After it got past the tree line, I think I sat there on that porch for uh, a good hour, just waiting for it to come back. maybe processing what I was seeing. I'm not sure, but I forgot this part. But when it was coming up on that deer, right before it got to that deer and got to it, like was on it and like killed it in 3 seconds, it made this the Stockman made this noise. It was like a growl. It was like, but it was like something like, have you ever gotten in your vehicle and turned the music up so loud that the bass is like shaking everything and you can hear it like in your chest and um like even in your back and your heartbeat and stuff. That's exactly what this thing did, and it didn't stop until that deer didn't move. The deer looked like it was going to run, but it didn't run. And then all of a sudden, it killed it in like 3 seconds. Like I said, I don't even know how it killed it because it happened so fast. I don't, and I've never had an encounter at our home like that since. And I don't know, it's because when my husband first started coming around um to the house, it was like he'd stay over like, I don't know, once or twice a week. Nothing would happen. Nothing would happen. There was nothing going on, normal life. It's when he started staying like the weekend and 2 days. Um, and then he would start bringing his like four wheelers and side by sides over. We would set up stuff like in the trail marker, and I was nervous. I was nervous to tell him anything. I was like, I can't tell him that these things are here. I can't. Or like he might not want to be with me. He might not want to, you know, I was so paranoid and so nervous about it because sometimes people just don't understand. And I didn't want to lose because they thought I was crazy. And our stuff started getting torn down and everything. And he's like, that's when Vic's channel got brought up because we started having this conversation. I said, there's these creatures here. I've got to tell you something. And I told him about, 2002. I told him about what I had seen, since I moved here. I said, if you look for them, you'll see them. I said, but they don't make their stuff pronounced, but they are right now. They're wrecking stuff. They're they were trashing all the stuff you put up for a side by side out on the trail. They were scratching the garage. We had some scratches on the brand new truck that he had. And he's like, do you really think that it's, I said, yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I said, what else would do that? You know what I mean? You're not going to have a coyote come up and do that to a vehicle. There's no one that's going to be walking down here, doing that to stuff. And that's the only thing I could associate it with. And I don't know if it's because it was a new person that was around, the property and, like, oh, they're going to be here for a while. Oh my gosh, these things are noisy. I'm sure. I can only imagine, and it got to the point where, we have, his kids, we have my kids, and, we do have an 18-month-old. So I'm like, we have very young children here, and I got very nervous. I started crying and I started getting really upset. And I said, I think we might have to move. I think that might be the end of my journey for this property, a place where I thought that I would live the rest of my days out, sorry, I'm getting emotional. So he always very understanding. And he's like, let's sleep on it. Maybe give it a week, see how you feel after that. But I'm behind you no matter what. He's like, I know. He's like, I've seen a little bit here and there. He's like, but I haven't had a bad encounter like you have. So I don't think he doesn't think it's, that much of a, big deal. He's like, I've only heard stories and I've only, heard about yours. He's like, I see the huge head, out in the tree line. I see the eyes at night. I see this, I see that. He's like, but nothing's ever come up to me. Nothing's ever bothered me. He goes, the truck I'm mad about, you know. Um He goes, little stuff like that. He goes, but it's nothing that we can't work around. But in my head, I'm thinking maybe it's just going to get worse. We should probably just go. And it's crushing my dreams, but I need my family to be safe. So it wasn't the very next day. So every morning, I take my trash out to the garage, and I don't do it at night for a reason. I don't do it at night because I'm scared. I don't want to go out to the garage at night. It's a little ways away from the house. Not too far, but far enough to where if I ran, maybe I'd trip and fall. So I got too scared. So I take the garbage out, put it in the bin in the back of the garage. I'm coming back out. As I'm coming back out of the garage, I hear what sounds like a sneeze or like a sniff. I know no one else is outside with me. And so I turn to the left. It's the side of the garage where it ends, where like the door is, and then the garage ends goes all the way back. And as I'm looking, I see something brown, dark brown, coming out of behind the garage. And I got a little bit of weeds there, like where he didn't weed whack, and I'm so mad about that. Like, because I'm always like, please, like, just get the sides. And I see this huge dog coming out. Now, this one is not like the one that I seen before. The one that I seen before had like the shepherd, the like a black shepherd mixed with like a wolf. This one was like rounded ears, dark brown to the point where I mean, this is broad daylight, so I can see this very good. And it's got like a little bit of reddish to it, like really dark brown with like maybe so dark brown that it's like reddish a little bit. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But it's got rounded ears, almost like a hyena. Huge ears, to off to the side of its, not all the way to the side of its head, but like kind of like on the top, like where a hyena's ears would be. And I'm staring at it, and I'm thinking in my head, how long do I have to make it from where I am right now to my front door? Because my kids are inside. I said, this thing is 3 times the size of the biggest German Shepherd I've ever seen. Um, and it's probably about 15 feet from me. And as it's moving, it's still moving. So it's kind of like what you call like an army crawl. Like it's like laying down, but like has its legs bent underneath it. And it's moving, but it's moving the side of its body. It's moving the side so I can see its face. And then it kind of like gets up a little bit, moves its arms out, and has its, this is how I know that it's not a dog. It's not a regular dog. It's not a wolf. It's nothing like that. It had these hands and the like raccoon looking hands, and their hands, its knuckles were like pointed inwards. So like it was like um I guess if you took your hand and you pressed your fingers towards your body, that's exactly what it looked like. And it had a thumb. And its thumb was the same way. And it was like as it was getting up, it like moved him forward, and then it would move him back. And I'm watching it do this. And as I'm watching it kind of get up on its, like a dog would sit, um, all of a sudden there's 2 eyes and a little snout that pokes out from underneath it, like underneath its hind quarter, like pushed right through, you know? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a little one. It's a little one, like it's a young one or a baby, but the size of this thing was like a 6-month-old German Shepherd. You know, it wasn't real tiny, but it was tinier than what I was looking at, and I could tell it was a female. And the way I could tell it was a female is because it had um like it looked like 4 breasts, like so when you see like a dog after it's had babies and it's been nursing for a while, that's exactly what this looked like, but way big. Like it was way bigger. And all of a sudden, as I'm looking, I see another little face poke like out behind it a little bit. And I'm like, there's two. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like I came out at the wrong time. Like it's going to get me. I'm near its young, like a bear, you know? And I'm scared. I'm terrified to look at this thing's face because I feel like as soon as I look up in this thing's eyes or whatever, it's going to get me. And I'm looking and I kind of just like look sideways up at it. And the look on this creature's face was pity. I felt like it looked like a a dog that's been scolded. That's exactly what it looked like. And I don't know how long it was. Could have been 1 to 2 minutes. It felt like it was 20 minutes that I was staring at this. And it kind of just, the two little ones just like, I don't know if they popped back behind her and just like vanished because I was staring at her. They were gone. And then she kind of just moved herself over, back over. Like she never moved like where her hindquarters were though. They stayed in the same place. And then the one like kind of just popped over and she was gone. She was gone out the back side of the garage. I ran to the house and I didn't come out. I called my husband. I let him know what happened. And I go, what do you think? I mean, I think we stayed up forever talking that night about it. I said, what do you think? Do you think um my crazy mind? 'Cause I'm always like a, believer. I'm always like a sign, like I want to believe in all the signs that I see. I gotta be realistic, but I want to be like, maybe this is a sign. Maybe this is I'm supposed to stay here. Maybe she was showing me like, look, like you want to leave because don't get me wrong here because I know, like he said, like my husband said, no, Tiffany, I don't think that. She was like, look, like I can um you know, relate with you. We both have kids. No, wasn't like that at all. But I told him, I said, I don't think it's a coincidence that we were out on the porch again talking last night. I'm crying. We're talking about leaving, this, that, and the other thing. And then this happens. Why? Just like Vic said, there's not one thing that they don't do that does not have a reason behind it. And I do think that that was the reason, was like, oh, you know what? We really don't want to relocate maybe. Um, and I'm thinking in my head, how long have they been there? I've never seen them. I've only seen the one and then the one previously. I've never seen them. How long have they been here? You know? And it's like as soon as that happened, it wasn't even 2 weeks later that like when you're sitting out on the back porch at night and it's pitch black dark. That's why I like it sometimes on really cloudy nights, like when it's dark and you can't see the moon, like there's no light from the moon. Obviously, we don't have streetlights, nothing out here. You can see, like, I don't know what they have in their eyes to make them, I'm not going to say they glow, but they're very bright, to make them bright enough to where it looks like, I mean, you can see them. You can see them when they're messing around in the trees. You can see them when they're, down by the creek. They never come to the pond though. They do not come. Not that I've ever seen. Um, and I've never seen them like peeking in windows or anything like that. But like when we're sitting out here late at night, we can see them. Um, and I was telling Vic, I said it's funny because the first time I was talking about this in a while, um, would have been a week or so ago when I was talking to Vic and I said, um, my husband stands up on the porch and kind of like he like takes like a breath back. And he's like, oh, you know, and he goes, turn around. He goes, look behind the cattails in the pond. And you just see this massive, massive dog head. And I'm just like, yep, here we go. And I just I get so worked up a little bit about it and so paranoid. Um, Now, a funny thing is my uncle always used to tell me, um, before I moved in when I was a kid and he had the garage, and also when he was building his house and we moved in, he would always say, Tiffany, don't go outside at night. You know, there's bobcats. There's bobcats. There's two bobcats here. They'll get you. Like, you do not go outside. They make horrible noises. They're awful, you know. And I always wonder, I'm never going to be able to know this ever. And I always wonder, like, did he know? Did he know? And my mother, you know, us talking about this week and me telling her I'm going to be on the show and hey, remember that thing that happened back in 2002? And she was like, Tiffany, she's like, I got to tell you something. She's like, when that happened, she goes, we had to, she was like, I'm guessing they were detectives or, worked for the sheriff's office or whoever, come here to let us know, hey, is this going to be Tiffany's residence now? Um, what she saw probably was like a neighbor's dog or coyote. And I think she might be having a mental break. So just keep like a real close eye on her. But my mom never told me any of that, until like were having this conversation about it. And that upsets me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. But it just goes to show that um these things are still they'll like you can't tell the wrong people, I guess, that you've seen them. Um, because I can't imagine if I decided to go, and that's why I feel horrible, like absolutely awful for these people who have encounters and just they're not believed. And they're made to be like crazy and stuff because if I was to go further with what I seen back in 2002, I don't know where I'd be today, I guess. And I guess I can just thank my lucky stars that things have turned out the way that they are. And and I guess that's basically all I have to say. I'm sorry if I've gone on a little too far.
No, not at all. No, the more you tell us about your experiences, the better. I want you to remember something, Tiffany. When something frightening has happened on your property, you felt like you've been able to retreat back into the cabin there or your home now. But that really is no barrier. Now, I'm sure there
No,
are people out there thinking, oh my gosh, don't tell her that. Well, Tiffany's more than intelligent enough to know that walls are not going to pose any barrier to a dog man that wants to break into the home and get her its hands on Tiffany. But the great news is that hasn't happened because none of the dogmen that have been around your property have wanted to do that, like we talked about in that first encounter or that first conversation that we had. As long as you remember that when you think about that first encounter, and maybe you start to think about things in the wrong way and the hairs start to stand up on the back of your neck and everything. Well, if you remember that fact right there, that will help snap you back into reality because that's clearly the truth. But when you had the first encounter, that dog man, it acted like it wanted to get you, but what was stopping it? I mean, it could have easily broken in and gotten you and your son if that's what it wanted to do, but that didn't happen because it didn't want to do that. So, yeah, please keep that in mind.
it's so hard. Like I said, we're just saying like love and hate. I go back and forth with it. Like, yeah, I know you're absolutely right, but there's still that like human scare factor because there's so many shows out there that are like they're killers, like these horror stories, and it's of course it's gonna play in the back of your mind sometimes. But I think you're right. I mean, you said this. It's like your motto if they wanted to get you, they would.
Well, that's right. If I had a nickel for every time I told an eyewitness who was having a hard time coming to terms with their encounters or encounter this next statement, 99.9% of the time, when an eyewitness has trouble coming to terms with their experiences with dogmen or an experience with a dogman, it's not their fault. It's just due to their inability to see the true nature of what happened and to be able to consequently read into why the dogman did what it did and why the dogman didn't do what it didn't do. Perfect example, you have an eyewitness tell you about how they decided to go for a walk one day in the woods, and they went ahead and parked the Ranger, and they grabbed a backpack off the seat, and they headed out and across the green field and into the woods. Well, they got about 400 yards from the Ranger, and all of a sudden this big werewolf looking thing jumps out and is right in front of them. So they're just caught at a total loss trying to figure out what they should do. And the only thing that they can think of is, because they were lightning fast as a runner, and they go on to tell you how in college they're actually an all-state sprinter. They tell you how they decided to bolt to the Ranger to save themselves from this dangerous monster. Well, you ask them, did you look to see if it was chasing you? And they tell you, oh yeah. And every time I looked over my shoulder, this dogman was about 6 feet behind me. But thank goodness I was just fast enough to beat it all 400 yards back to the Ranger. Of course, it was 6 feet behind me every time I looked over my shoulder at the thing. But thank goodness I was fast enough to beat it back to the Ranger. I mean, it's obvious what's
Yeah,
going
no,
on.
you weren't beating it.
Exactly. It was messing with you. And yeah, I mean, as long as whenever you're traumatized to the point that so many of these eyewitnesses are traumatized, it's going to take you off your game. You're not going to see through the forest and see the trees because you're so off your game. You're so taken aback by your experience or experiences that you can't think through it logically. But for someone who wasn't there and they share with you a clear outside opinion of what happened, then it all makes sense. And when you think about what they're sharing with you and you think, you know what, that's a really good point. 400 yards back to the Ranger and it was 6 feet behind me the whole time. Wow. I guess he's got a point there. It was messing with me. There's a huge difference, Tiffany, as you know, between being messed with, me and the boys was just funning with you, and actually having something like that that's out to get you. You clearly are not in a situation where any of these dogmen are out to get you, because if they
Right,
were, we wouldn't be having this conversation tonight. So,
right. I want it to get back to the point where, like, my husband can ride his like side by sides back at the house, where he doesn't have to drive 30 minutes to his friend's house, and keep his stuff there and ride there. You know what I mean? So we have the property. Like, we should be able to do it here. And the reason we don't is because we feel like there would be repercussions for that. But that's where I feel like irritated, I guess, with the situation that we have going on here.
well, I can understand why you would be irritated. You shouldn't have to go through all this. If your husband wants to go out and have some side by side fun, then he should be able to do that. If you want to be able to sit on the porch at 3 a.m. and have some coffee without a care, you should be able to do that. But you can't, because of what we're talking about tonight, which is just ridiculous that they've decided to camp out there and do
Right.
these things.
That's why I laugh when people say that these creatures, these dogmen, don't have like a little bit of like human characteristic in them, like intelligence. They absolutely do. Because no other animal is gonna come here and be like, we're mad that you're doing this, so we're gonna mess with you this way. There just isn't, besides like maybe like a Sasquatch or a Dogman. I mean, that's just the logic of it, and I only know one side of it. I only know the Dogman side of it, and that's our life, that's our truth. So, like my husband said, he's like, I don't care who believes us. He's like, we know the truth. We know what's going on here.
Yeah, that's right. You do know the truth. You know what's going on. It's unfortunate. There are things that you're going to know. And when you try to share them with people in your life, they're going to laugh at you. But
Right.
as long as you never lose sight of the fact that you know the truth and them not believing you has nothing to do with you. It's a
Right.
them problem, not a you problem. As long as you keep that in mind, then you're golden. There's no
I
problem.
will.
It's only when you start to let that affect you that the problems start to creep in. But as long as you stick to the truth, you've got this licked. So, yeah, like I said, please remember that.
I
Well,
will.
I'll tell you what, Tiffany, let's get to some listener questions now. I'm pulling them from the list, live chat. The first one I want to ask is from Sherry Rusk. And Sherry wants to know, do you feel that it just wasn't meant to be because of what happened?
I guess I don't understand the question. What wasn't meant to be?
Well, I think if I'm reading into this right, I think she wants to know if your dream home, your your desire to be able to live in this
I
dream
I
home.
always wonder that. I like I said, a lot of sleepless nights. Been here many years. So I've gone back and forth, and I think we both think, if something major was to happen, I guess that was going to be bad for the family, hurting us, anything like that. I'd feel like it wasn't meant to be, but honestly, um, I don't think that at all. I think it was meant to be for me to find this home again, to have not a horrible encounter. Not saying that it's easy, with them being around here, but I don't feel like it's not meant to be.
Wow, you're strong of character. I'm impressed. As you know, most people couldn't do that. Most people, after
Right.
their first encounter, they would have headed for the hills.
It's true. Like I said, I've been through a lot in my life. So this I can deal with. Now, if what happened before was to happen again or keep happening, I couldn't deal with that. I don't think. Nope.
Yeah, that is a lot. I'm just so impressed after having the experiences that you've had. Like I said, most people would have been out of there yesterday, but no, not you. The fact that you and your husband are still there, it makes me wonder if maybe someday down the road you will be able to go back to normal and he'll be able to have his side by side moments and you'll be able to sit on the porch with coffee and you won't have to worry about them being around. I sure hope that
That's the
winds up being
goal.
the case.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. It really would. And this next one is more of a comment than a question. Baby girl said, so you may have a Dogman clan around. Well, understand, baby girl, there's a lot of talk out there about Dogman clans. And I'm one of those people that doesn't believe in Dogman clans because if you think about their daily caloric requirements, I mean, my daily caloric requirement's probably 2,500, close to 3,000, maybe a little more. But with these guys being as big as they are, their daily caloric requirements for a big one would be ridiculous. Okay, imagine if you had a group of dogmen together. Well, the resources in any particular area can only support so many predators. If you have a group of huge predators in an area, they're going to deplete those resources almost overnight. The reason why large predators, apex predators, move around a huge home range is to avoid depleting the resources in any of those particular areas. It's like a self sustaining process. Stay here for a little bit, move on. Stay there for a little while, move on. And by doing that, it's a healthy balance. The areas that they left yesterday or the area they left last week, it's still rebuilding by the time they get back there, but it's at a healthy level still. when they come back. With dogmen, if you had a group of them, they'd wipe everything out in whatever area they stayed in. So it would be a true hunter killer situation. They couldn't go back to the areas that they lived in for any period of time because that's now a depleted area. So yeah, that's why I don't believe in this idea, this notion that you can have dogman clans. I'm not saying that they can't come together. I think occasionally they might come together and be found in numbers, but I think that's clearly the exception rather than the rule. The
I
next
think that
question.
you're right. I think that they can, because it's been years, like from seeing one to then like seeing the other ones. I think that they move around, and I think they're like they maybe can sense that maybe one was here before, and it's like, oh, this might be a cool place to stick around for a little bit. I think you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, that just might be what's behind it. It looks like she has another question. She wants to know, do you think the dogmen are sensing your fear?
Um, yeah, I do. Um, I do, but I don't think it's turned out bad this time around. Um, Maybe if this was to have happened 6 years ago when that one Dogman encounter happened with the deer, I think it could have turned out a lot worse if I would have been outside on my porch crying, upset that they were around in here. But but for now, I'm paranoid. Absolutely paranoid about it, yes, because I do feel that they can sense my fear, because when I start talking about it, I do have anxiety really bad. And I feel like they start showing themselves more. Maybe I'm looking for them more after that. It's like you seeing bear out in the woods, and you're not used to seeing bear out in the woods. But then, like, life goes on. You're taking care of your kids, you're doing your dishes, you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're, just doing whatever. And you happen to see one outside when you're looking. Now, when you have anxiety and you're like, oh my gosh, there's bear outside, and you're looking and you're looking and you're looking, like you're bound to see one sooner or later. I definitely think that they can sense my fear.
Yeah, they're pretty intuitive. I'm sure they do sense it as well. Talking about the whole fear thing, this next question from Richard Edwards touches on that. He wants to know, do you think they like scaring you? Do they get pleasure from your fear?
Oh, I'm sure they probably do. I've like I said, I've only had that one encounter where that has happened, and I don't even know if that would have happened if he didn't realize that I seen it. I think that it only went crazy when it was like, oh, I've been spotted. Who knows how many times it was looking in the window, you know? So I'm not sure. Only from my experience and my experience lately, I don't think that they get pleasure from my anxiety, or they'd be out here knocking on my windows and stuff like that. Just like Vic said, with like any creature that's got some kind of intelligence, or us human beings, like you've got the good people and you've got the bad. You know, you're gonna have bad actors and you're gonna have good actors. And I think we have good ones at the moment, thank God.
Yeah, thank God is right. Although, like I've said countless times, these guys are not wired to be dangerous to people. Can they be dangerous to people? Oh, you better believe it, but they're not wired to be that way. A cat is wired to be dangerous to mice and rodents in general, period, and other things as well. That's just how they're wired. If the opportunity presents itself in almost every case, yeah, they are going to try and kill the rodent. But with dogmen, it's clearly not the case. I've had tons of people over the years say, well, Vic, you don't know about the people. You've never spoken with the people who've been killed by dogmen. And that's true. For anyone who's been killed by a dogman, no, I haven't spoken with them. But I'll tell you what I have spoken with, who I have spoken with, thousands, thousands, and thousands. Think about it. Thousands and thousands of people who were caught dead to rights by the dogmen they encountered and could have been dispatched easily by the dogmen they encountered, but they were allowed to go without a single scratch. Now, if I spoke with 5 people who could tell me that, 5 credible eyewitnesses, that'd be one thing. But a pool of thousands upon thousands of people who were caught, again, dead to rights, but allowed to leave without a single scratch, without a single hair in their heads being harmed. That right there is clear proof that these guys are not wired to be deadly and dangerous to us. They're not going to harm us as soon as the opportunity presents itself in most cases. That's not to say, again, that's not to say that there aren't deviant ones that will kill you as soon as they get the opportunity, because any critter out there in the woods, I mean, you are going to have deviant ones. Horses, pigs, camels, goats, elephants, you name it, people. There are examples of deviant people, all these animals, you name it, and they're deviant examples. So why should dogmen be any different? But there's a reason why I say that these guys are not wired to be that way. And that's the reason. This next question is from Mike Serta. And Mike wants to know, have you had any other paranormal experiences?
No, I can't say that I have. I mean, um, I did tell Vic about one time. Me and my daughter, I used to take her to daycare, like where we live in Tioga County. Even the highway is rural, like it's around woods. Most of it is. So, I was taking her to the daycare one morning. I think it was like 5:30 in the morning, and there's like a bend in 81 on the highway, and it's right next to a golf course. And there's like a swampy area there, lots of woods, lots of trees. It's not like this high class thing. I mean, you're talking like in the sticks golf course. So as I'm driving, I see like this it looks like a big hairy bent over creature, black, and it looks like it's down in the ditch by the highway. And this is like a 75-mile-per-hour highway, so it's fast, it's not slow. um and this thing is running bent over, like trying to hide itself, but it's not being very good at it because like anybody driving by that looked over to the left would be able to see it. And I started to slow down a little bit because I see the ears, and in my head I'm like, oh my gosh, I've seen this before. you know um and I have my daughter with me, and she's like, what's that? And I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. I go, it might have just been a bear or something. I'm like, I don't know what it is. It's got long hair, and we kind of slowed down, and then I'm like, maybe we should just keep going. I have her with me. I don't know what this is. I'm just going to keep going. And honestly, besides that, I have not had any other paranormal activity in my life besides what I've told you guys.
Well, I think you've had enough between
Yeah,
the dogmen and that. I
yeah.
think you have. Have you ever played with a Ouija board at any time in your life?
No, I haven't.
I see. The reason why I ask that is almost every time I ask that question, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself here. If I had a nickel for every time I asked an eyewitness that question and they said no. Well, other than the one time when I was in college and we played with one for about an hour. Well,
No,
then
actually,
you
me and
did.
my sister wanted to so bad, so bad. Like we were at a Thanksgiving dinner at my mom's, family's house, and they got out the Ouija board. The kids did, and my mom, she must have came in right at the right time because she pulled us girls upstairs, and she was like, "If I catch you ever, playing with that," she was like, "That'll be the end of your summer." That we never played with one.
Well, good for her. I'm glad she set you straight.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want any part of that sort of thing. Well, it looks like we're about a quarter past now, so we're going to get ready to shut this down for the night. But before we do, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing the details of all those experiences with us, Tiffany. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And if down the road, if you start having encounters that you do have trouble with, then yeah, please let me know. I'll always be there for you and I'll be ready to help.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks again so much and have a great night. And as always, everyone, all of you out there listening, thanks again so much for listening to the show and supporting it. More important than that, like I always say, thanks so much for supporting the eyewitnesses. You'll never know how much you help their lives. But if you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmenencounters.com and submit a report. If you do that, then I'll be more than happy to contact you and schedule a time so we could talk about your encounter. But having said that, thanks again so much for listening and have a great night.